Welcome to the Great Loop Radio podcast, brought to you by America's Great Loop Cruisers Association. We're dedicated to sharing Great Loop information and inspiration with those actively cruising, planning for, or dreaming about a Great Loop adventure. I'm Kim Russo. I'm the director of AGLCA. Today, we are continuing our story of our loop series, and we'll have some more of our gold loopers. This week, it is Terri and Aubrey Smoot who did the loop on their Aspen Power Catamaran. So kind of a different boat. So we're going to dive into that with Aubrey and Terri in just a moment. Before we bring them in, I do want to take a moment to recognize and thank our Admiral sponsors who support AGLCA at the highest level. They are Passage Maker Trawler Fest, Great Loop Yacht Sales, Skipper Bob Publications, and Waterway Guide Media. As always, we encourage our listeners and viewers to support these businesses that support the Great Loop. And now officially, I'd like to welcome Aubrey and Terri to Great Loop Radio. Thanks for joining me today.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to get to talk to you about your trip because I know you were, some loopers who thoroughly enjoyed it, as most do,
absolutely.
but just seem to have, this joyous spirit every time I talk to you or heard you out there or ran into you out there. So I'm excited to have the chance for you to tell the story. Let's start out, if we could, tell us what attracted the two of you to the loop and what made you decide it was something for you.
How about if I take that? I'm a huge Stephen Covey fan, right? And one of his principles is start with the end in mind. So as we were heading towards retirement, the question was, what are we going to do? We know that we're going to finish up this phase of our life where we've worked all the time, but what are we doing next? And there had to be something out there. I grew up with a bit of a wanderlust spirit. My grandfather actually took a pickup camper from Delaware all the way to Alaska in 1970. And I don't know how he did it, right? There was no interstate, no credit cards, no ATMs, no navigation equipment. The truck probably had a range of 110 miles. I don't know, because they got horrible mileage back then.
Right.
But it really kind of led us to say, where in this era, at this phase of life, can you find an adventure? And the answer was in a statement that an older friend gave me. We did like a mini loop around the Chesapeake back in 2008, just on a little 21-foot center console, and stayed in motels everywhere we went. And he got mentioning one evening about this trip that could circumnavigate the eastern half of the country, and he wasn't even really sure of the name, but it planted the seed, and it kind of grew and grew till, to be honest, it kind of became an obsession. Like, that's what we're going to do when we retire.
Right.
Yeah. So that's how we got into it.
Yeah. So tell us when you did the loop, what period of time, that kind of thing. Were you a typical continuous looper, or did you do it in segments?
We were continuous loopers. We did take some breaks to go see our kids over holidays. We rented a car and went.
Mm-hmm.
But we started May 1st. We were fleet of 23-24.
Mm-hmm.
We left our house here on the Chesapeake, and actually we're in the Middle Bay. We actually went south 66 miles to the Norfolk Rendezvous.
Mm-hmm.
It was an amazing experience. It built our confidence up.
Yeah, double thumbs up.
So much we were doing, and then turned around and headed north. So it took us, let's see, we finished April 26th of 24. It was like 363 days and 8,239 Miles.
Wow. And any idea how many of those days were actually underway versus in port or traveling off the boat?
Not really, no. So my career, I spent in front of a computer screen, in front of spreadsheets and all that. And I wasn't going to do that in retirement. So I don't have those exact statistics. Nebo logged our miles and that's kind of how we reported it. But no, unfortunately.
Yeah. That is a perfectly valid answer. So I want to hear about the boat. I'm a fan of it. It's a unique kind of boat. It's an Aspen Power Cat. And I'll let you kind of fill us in on the rest of the details.
Yeah, so we have their model, the C108, which is the largest of their trailerables. So it is 37 feet long overall, 35 at the water, and it's got a 10/8 beam, so relatively narrow beam, and it's actually trailerable. Most people don't think of catamarans in trailerable, but that's not really what makes it unique. What makes it unique is it's got an asymmetric hull design. So the port hull is actually 35% smaller than the starboard. And the belief is 35% reduction in size is a 50% reduction in drag. So it's done for fuel efficiency. You'll see this, and boy, did it raise a lot of questions. Matter of fact, we could have funded the loop if we could have gotten a buck every time we answered it. But it has a 200 on the starboard side. It's pushed by outboard. So it's got a 200 on the starboard side and a 115 on the port. So a 37-foot boat with only 315 horsepower, and it can go 30 miles an hour. To give you a feel for the fuel efficiency at real slow speeds, like when you're up in the Canadian waterways and you're going 5-6 miles an hour, because it's so breathtakingly beautiful, you don't want to miss a thing. We would get 6-7 miles per gallon. At trawler speed, say, 7 to 9, we would get 3 to 4. And at cruising speed, so say 18 to 22, we would get anywhere from 1.8 to about 2.2 miles per gallon. And the beauty of that is we really didn't pay the performance penalty that you see when you speed up. And when you think about a 37-foot boat going 20 miles an hour and still getting 2 miles per gallon, it's pretty cool. But that's not kind of the sole differentiator of it. The boat, the boat was built in the Pacific Northwest. And so they really understand rough water. And the manufacturer refers to it as it's the only boat with a suspension. And the way you engage the suspension is you speed up. So in 3-foot seas on a 3-second period, we can cruise along at 20 miles an hour and I can drink my coffee and we talk just like we're talking now, no problem. 2-foot seas, I don't care what the period is, we don't even notice them. Matter of fact, Terri has cooked on the stove and made coffee in those conditions because the boat's so stable. To really drive that point home, when we did the Gulf crossing, we did a day crossing and we ran it at about 23 miles an hour, but we got the forecast wrong. And we thought it was going to be a stunning day and it proved to be less than that. We got caught in 4 to 5 foot seas. And yet we ran it, at 23-ish the whole way and really didn't have a problem. And they were on a pretty short period. So it was challenging conditions. And certainly the boat's moving around a lot, but there's no pounding, no spraying, no anything like that. When we went out to the Bahamas, again, we got that one wrong too. There might be a trend here. But it was forecasted to be kind of the weather window to go hit the Bahamas. And we got about 30 miles out and got caught in solid 7 to 9 foot. The other captains, when we got in at West End, said, no, they were way over 10. I really don't know how big they were. I just know they were big waves. But it was like, 7 to 9 foot with a 3-foot chop on top. And we ran them, I'd like to say at 20 miles an hour, but what really happened is it was 13 miles an hour up, 23 miles an hour down.
All right. That is not my kind of day on the water.
But the boat did it phenomenally. It just ran right through it. And, we weren't splashing, we weren't spraying, we weren't, it did it.
Yeah.
Other parts of the boat design?
There's a lot. I do want to talk about that, but there's a lot I want to unpack from what you just said from a couple different directions. So I'm going to start with the 7 to 9 footers you saw in the Bahamas, because I certainly don't want to leave any of our newer loopers or our perhaps reluctant spouses thinking that is typical. So first of all, it's not typical, and it's, the weather window. It's all about the weather window, and I'm sad that the forecast was that wrong. So I guess my question is, to probably put some minds at ease, is from talking to other loopers out there who went on a different day. Did other people experience conditions like that? Because it is pretty unusual. But the second question is, you talked about the other captains saying they were 10 feet. Did you have buddy boats crossing? Were they other loopers? And what was the outcome of that day for everybody?
Everybody made it safe and sound. And yeah, I didn't want to paint a horror story. I was kind of bragging about the boat. So my there.
I don't think it is a horror story, because the good news is all of the boats were fine. It's an uncomfortable conditions for most people, but the boats are generally fine. And that's kind of the point I'd like to get across. But also, tell us about who you went with. What kind of boats were they, and what was kind of the outcome for them?
Well, let me say, on the way back, we were in 2-footers. It was an unusual day. It's just unusual. And nobody else we'd spoken to had run into something like that. So it wasn't typical. It was a very windy season. And it just happened to be off on the forecast that one day.
Yeah.
And by the way, once you get, so we went from West Palm over to the West End and into the Sea of Abaco.
Mhm.
Once you're in the Sea of Abaco, it's beautifully protected, and you can run all over the Bahamas in very protected conditions.
Well, and the good news is in the speed of your boat, it's a pretty short crossing too, if you do encounter some bad conditions.
You asked about buddy boats, and
Yeah.
so we were, had a bit of an anomaly, and this is true on the Gulf crossing as well as the Bahamas. Our boat gets more comfortable at speed, so we're too fast for the slow boats.
Mhm.
But a lot of the fast boats get on plane at 24 plus, and they move, so we're too slow for the fast boats.
Mhm.
So we did those trips solo. We didn't do those with a buddy boat. We ran out, but we had confidence in the ShoreBilly, and we ran it without really any concern.
Yeah.
And we were up on the rivers, and up in Canada and many other areas, we traveled with other boats.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just the open water that was a little bit of a different situation.
Absolutely. And I do want to talk a little bit about some of those cruising speeds, because really, to someone who is just starting out at this journey and maybe hasn't really even looked at a whole lot of boats or considered fuel consumption yet, 2.2 miles a gallon sounds horrific until you
Right.
start to, if you're thinking, land life. If you're thinking of a lot of looper boats, at 2.2, you're getting better than double the distance on a gallon that our boat gets at trawler speed. And the difference between 1 gallon per mile to 2 gallons per mile, again, if you're thinking in the land world, doesn't even sound like that big of a deal, but it's half the fuel cost at the same speed or better, because some of those other speeds that you discussed, you get much better than the perch gets. And we're a more typical motor yacht, 41 feet. So the fuel savings is hugely substantial. Essentially you got half price or better from what we paid for fuel. So I just want to make sure that, the people who are hearing 2 miles per gallon and thinking, oh my gosh, that's awful, that's actually really good for a looping boat.
Yeah, I've been in the boating world so long that I'm used to thinking in those lower numbers, but you're spot on. We would get anywhere from 2 to 4 times better comparable boats at comparable speeds.
Yeah.
And that was great. What it really gave us was also great range with the fuel we had on hand.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yes.
think one thing that's really interesting about some of the fuel consumption numbers you reported also is that for a lot of the faster boats, because they plane when they're going at those higher speeds, you're not saving a tremendous amount by slowing down on fuel.
Oh, absolutely.
So for example, I think for the perch, if we're going on plane faster, we get like 0.7 miles per gallon. And if we slow down to, 10 miles an hour or so, we get 1 mile to the gallon. So it's a difference. It's not tremendous, where in your case, those differences at different speeds, really, it does make sense when you slow down and can really extend that fuel range quite a bit.
And it gave us the ability to do other things with ease too. So one of the places we hit was Quebec City.
Mhm.
And then we went to Montreal. And the trip from Quebec City to Montreal is 200 plus miles against the most intense current I've ever imagined. I don't know if you've seen that current yet. It'll
Not yet.
the Aton's over. It's impressive. And we, with the speed capability, we ran it without any problem. And it certainly was a hit fuel consumption,
Mhm.
but it wasn't a devastating hit.
Right.
It cost us about a half mile per gallon.
Right. So for those of us who are partly basing our loop boat choice on the livability of the boat, we've talked about it being trailerable, but it is big for a trailerable boat. You said 37 feet,
Yes,
35 at the waterline. Tell us what kind of living features you get with that kind of space.
Sure. You want to go ahead? Or you want me to?
So we have it always surprises people when they come downstairs. We have a king size bed, which is really nice, super comfortable, even more comfortable than what we have at home. We have a wet head, so we can shower downstairs near the bedroom. We also have a shower outside that has hot water to it. We have a raw water wash down, which is really nice for cleaning off the bow after you pull up your anchor. We have, in addition to the king size bed, we have 2 single berths. We did use those for storage. Probably didn't even need to take as much as we did, but that's what we all do. We have normal kitchen appliances, even a microwave. We have outside a little bar sitting area that you can actually pick up the stools from the outside and bring them into the kitchen table, and we can seat 6, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the really nice things is our davit system. Do you want to explain how that worked? That was just amazing with the dog and the dinghy that we chose and the options that that gave us.
Yeah, so the way they designed the davit, it rides above the outboards and it'll drop straight back into the water behind the outboards. So we can launch and retrieve the dinghy in about 1 minute.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. And since it rode above the outboards, when we were in adverse conditions, the dinghy was always well out of way of everything.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have any issues of, waves catching it or pulling on it, or really no issues whatsoever with it.
Wow.
Yeah, but back to the inside. So she talked about the king size bed, 2 single berths. It has dual captain's chairs. So we both participate in the cruise. What it doesn't have is a fly bridge,
Mm-hmm.
which, I wish it did, but it doesn't. But what it does have is a remote control to the helm, and we've got seats that'll go up on the bow.
Mm-hmm.
So on really, really nice days, when you're going 6 miles an hour, we take the remote control up there and sit and have coffee and watch the sunrise and
Yeah.
Beautiful Canadian waterways or something like that. It wasn't a fly bridge, but it was really nice.
Sounds delightful. And full disclosure, you had posted something in our forum the other day for somebody who was looking for a trailerable boat, I think, and posted some information about a new model or a bigger model that did have a fly bridge, because I had used your information and went and Googled that, and a little out of my price range, but I did see that there are some Aspens now with fly bridges.
Yeah, they have them with fly bridge and with diesel. And the one you're referring to is they're going to have one that comes out and it's outboard pushed.
Yeah. Interesting.
And because we don't have a fly bridge, the gunnel on the port side is nice and wide. And when we would be locking, I could just, jump up, run up front, manage the lines very easily in and out of the boat. It felt almost like driving a car,
Mm-hmm.
the
Nice.
way it handled. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of advantages with docking and locking as well.
Yeah, the walkway from along the side of the boat, the cabin is offset so that one side's wider than the other, and the wide side, I think, is a 9 or 11-inch
Mhm.
walkway. I forget exactly. Then it's got a narrow one on the other side. But to get to the bow, for a lock or something, you just walk normally. It's non-obstructed. It was very easy.
Yeah, I imagine the difference in the walkway size probably has something to do with the difference in the sizes of the sponsons on the Cat, the asymmetric setup. Am I correct about that? I think all of our engineers are going to be, trying to figure out how this all comes together with the asymmetric nature of this Cat.
I think so, because I think it shifted some of the weight over to the side. So they made the walkway on the narrower side.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break and play a message from one of our sponsors. I think I promise everyone, Aspen is not a sponsor of this podcast. I'm just a fan. And Aubrey and Terri really love their boats, and it is unique. So it begs a lot of questions for me because I just want to know more. But we're going to take a break. We'll play a message from a sponsor. When we come back, I want to talk more about, your loop and the highlights and what you gain from it, and switch from kind of the practical about the boat to more of the touchy-feely about what the trip was really like for the two of you. So we'll be back in a moment. The Boat Galley will make your boat life better. They offer 8 online courses on topics related to living on a boat, such as how to store everything you'll need, living with a smaller fridge, taking a dog with you, and effective use of your VHF. Their quick reference cruising guides will simplify your life underway, giving quick answers to questions like, where's the next fuel stop? Or how high is that bridge? The Boat Galley Cookbook and its 800 boat-friendly recipes, including 75 Docktail appies and 40 drinks, will make cooking aboard a snap. Get 10% off purchases with code AGLCA.
Green Turtle Bay Marina and Resort has consistently been voted a must-stop by loopers. It has earned the coveted 5-anchor designation from Quimby's Cruising Guide. This full-service marina features over 450 slips. They are located at mile marker 31.5 on the scenic Cumberland River. Green Turtle Bay is a proud commander sponsor of AGLCA, so join them and find your waterway of life.
We are back on the Great Loop Radio podcast. Today, we're talking with Terri and Aubrey. They are some of our gold loopers who finished the Great Loop earlier this year aboard their Aspen Power Cat, and they're telling us the story of their Great Loop. So one thing also unique about your loop is that you, as you said, were part of the fleet of 2023-2024, which means this time last year, you were in the big fleet of boats in the Chicago area, waiting for locks to reopen. I think at the end, we had 250 or so looper boats that were waiting to come through. And Aubrey, you were one of the people who, stood up and raised your hand and agreed to kind of lead one of those fleets down the river, because we broke everyone into groups of approximately 16. So thank you for that. Thank you for your willingness to kind of lead a group and to hop out front and do that. And you were one of the early groups, I believe, too, if I'm not mistaken, which brought even extra challenges. So tell us what that whole thing was like.
We were the Fantastic Four.
Yes.
Number 4. Yeah. Yeah. In hindsight, at the time, there's a lot of question and concern and what's going to happen when, and how's this going to work, and will it work, and everything else. In hindsight, largely due to the organization that AGLCA gave us, it was really positive. We got held up in Hammond for weeks, and that gave us a chance to do day trips or trips to go see our grandkids, which was great. But it also gave us a lot of time to get to know other loopers. The docktails there were spectacular.
Lots of fun.
Every night. Yeah, on a different group of 50 every time. But then coming down the river, you had to develop a sense of trust and camaraderie with the rest of the flotilla. We were very, very blessed in that she had stepped off at that particular moment due to taking care of some business back in Raleigh. But very blessed that the Flotilla 4 was an amazing group. I had a co-leader that stepped up on, Jackie B being the boat, and helped tremendously. But everyone on the flotilla was helping everybody else and worked together, and there was no conflict or chaos. And by the time we got through Starved Rock, which is kind of the intention to let the flotillas then organically form after that, you really had a sense of camaraderie with the rest of the group that you wouldn't have achieved if you hadn't gone through that. And it was really neat.
And there have been those types of challenges in other years. And I talked to so many people who put off their loop because of that closure last year. That was, it was an extended closure and into October, of course. And you probably heard me preach it time and time again when we were kind of organizing everybody and doing some webinars on how this would work, was that it seems like a headache. It seems like a hassle. It seems like a challenge. And it probably is all of those things. But in the end, it ends up building that camaraderie. Just as you said, you've got kind of a built-in group of people you're traveling with. And, we had some people who said, we hadn't run into another looper on Lake Michigan, and we started from Lake Michigan, and our first docktails was at Hammond. And after that, it was fabulous because we, found our tribe and had our group of friends. And the rivers can be a challenge. It's great to have, that kind of buddy boating that you're kind of packed together in a lock anyway, almost so that you could touch each other from all ends of the lock. So I think it wound up being a pretty good experience for most people that went through it.
So we had 2 spectacular cooks in our flotilla.
That always helps.
Linda on Faith and Michael on Pickett's Pub. And they served the lock masters. And then, of course, they then forward that message, and we were very welcome every time we got in the lock.
It always helps. So tell us, you had planned the trip for quite some time, so you obviously had some expectations. How did the actual act of doing the loop live up to those preconceived notions that you had, or the expectations that you had built over time?
Yeah. I was the reluctant spouse. I was worried, how is this going to go? How is that going to go? And just never having done it before. And I had gone into it the mindset that, okay, I'll start out the trip, I'll go a month or two and then go home for a while and then go back, because I don't know if I could do this. And after a month, I just exceeded my
Sure, Tom.
expectations. I was having so much fun. I wouldn't have dreamed of missing a day. And as we started to meet more and more people and have our buddy boats, we had buddy boats through, New York up through Canada and down into Michigan and in parts of Florida. I wouldn't have traded that in for anything. So it exceeded mine.
Well, that is great to hear.
To put an even bigger spin on it, I spent 5 years planning.
Mhm.
We spent 5 years planning, 2 years building the boat, and a substantial investment in changing our home situation stuff so we could actually go on the loop. So my expectations were through the roof. They were as high as I could be, and I got to tell you, it exceeded every one of them. I mean, it exceeded expectations so far that it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, one of those old looper adages is that, the difference between, attitude is the difference between an ordeal and an adventure. So you obviously went into it with the right attitude for it to be an adventure. So, question for you, Terri. A lot of somewhat reluctant spouses that I've spoken to recently, and a lot of non-reluctant spouses, myself included, have talked lately about the idea that there is certainly an adjustment period and kind of a time frame when you first start out, that you're out of your comfort zone day after day. And I hear from loopers who are in the first month of their trip and going, this is really not what I thought, and it's not what I bargained for. And I encourage them, give it till 2 months. And so many people have said that's the time frame. It takes a couple of months to kind of get your grounding. Did you find that to be the case, or were you instantly hooked, like right from the time you started the actual loop?
I would say I was lucky we started on the Chesapeake. And a lot of people are intimidated by the Chesapeake, but that was our home base.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been out on the Chesapeake a lot. So a lot of it seemed a lot easier after the Chesapeake.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that it's just bizarrely the hardest part for me was getting into a groove with cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm a big cook, and I'm used to having everything I need at my disposal and grocery stores galore and all that. So it was a shift for me to learn how to simplify that and, not do such big meals.
Mm-hmm.
The other adjustment was just us learning how to, we're great communicators, but communicate both.
Mm-hmm.
To read each other with what your needs are now about docking and locking and what each other are comfortable with. So I would say that probably took a month or two. Yeah, not more than that.
Yeah. So I know in the pre-interview questions, when I asked what your highlights were, and it is a tough question because there typically are so many highlights. So we're going to start with, I don't know if I would call them lowlights or challenges. And I always say, if there weren't some challenges along the way, it wouldn't be an accomplishment to do this trip. And it is a big accomplishment. So what are some of the challenges that you feel like you faced and were able to overcome?
I would, in all honesty, they were minimal.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute minimal. Yeah, there were some of them fell into the annoyance level, like getting your medicines delivered and, organizing that. Mechanically, the boat was new, so we didn't have many challenges there. Whether you and I got to, or the three of us got to enjoy Gulfport when that big storm rolled through.
Yes.
Couldn't have been in a better location,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
For the folks listening to this, we're in Gulfport, Florida, in a spectacular marina that was literally protected on all four sides. And this massive storm blew over, flooded the docks, had to shut off all the electricity. But the next day you get on your boat, everything looks fine. You walk in town and you realize, oh my gosh, that was a serious storm that came through.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some sailboats that had blown in from the mooring field out there that were ashore. So it was a substantial storm, and in the marina, it was very well protected.
Right. So it's smart to choose good marinas.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes a huge difference. We would always take our time and look at where it was, what the protection was like.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that made a difference. Other challenges, it was a really windy, like I mentioned, a windy time down in Florida, unusually windy season. So just being able to, not always go when you wanted to go, or you may have had to wait a day or two, but that's okay. That's part of the trip. You can't plan everything. You have to be flexible. Every day you have to be flexible.
Yep.
And you cannot control the weather.
We did have one though. Our anchor is a fortress.
Mhm.
And as reported in your rendezvous, the fortress is great in certain environments and not so much in other environments. And we could discover that firsthand. It did give up on us a couple times, and fortunately nothing bad happened except, the adrenaline spike when you try and get it going.
Right.
But to relay it was actually a comical story. We were in the Bahamas and we're at this beautiful restaurant. Do you know where you swim with the pigs? I forget which island which key that is, but No Name Key, maybe.
I think I think it's No Name. Not sure.
We're overlooking, and our boat's anchored out there, and our meal's coming, and all of a sudden we see the boat just take off.
Oh my goodness.
And and it was heading towards the dock, and so we did our imitation of running. I'm not sure it was really running. We got to it in time, and having the davit system that would let us lift the dinghy so fast, we were able to get back under control before we hit the dock.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a scary story though.
Another time in the Keys, it started to drag. I mean, it didn't go far, but we all use anchor alarms, and that gives you a whole other level of security while you're sleeping. If that anchor alarm on your phone goes off on that app, then you need to readjust. So
yeah.
And it will wake you up.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Now you also have a very sweet but pretty large dog aboard.
Yes.
Which having the easy, davit system also helps with that. But do you feel like with a dog aboard, you ended up at anchor less than you would have otherwise, so that you could, be a convenient place to bring the dog ashore?
No, he really didn't limit us in any dimension.
we always seem to find a place.
Yeah. So this was not foresight. It was just fortunate. When he was a puppy, we wanted a date night. So we took him to training, and he got good at that. And so we took him to agility. And, really just for us to have fun. Well, on the trip, that paid huge dividends, because we'd be at like John Penny Camp and on their mooring balls, and it's rocking and rolling, and the dinghy is rocking and rolling all over the place. And I can just go on, and he'd jump right on, take him ashore,
Wow.
come back off. I got to relay this one story to you because it's hilarious. So a storm was coming in, and we were in the Keys, and we found the perfect anchorage in Marathon. It was a little, almost like a cul-de-sac kind of setting, all around, and it was lined completely around us with mangroves. So from an anchorage and a boat perspective, it was ideal. From taking a dog ashore, not so much, because the mangroves have those roots that are very hard to cross. Well, somebody had taken and put a plank across the mangrove's roots and actually strapped it to the roots so that there was a walkway that cut through the mangroves. Perfect, right? So I pull up on the dinghy, and I'm looking, and it's 3 feet above the dinghy, and our dinghy's only a 9 foot, so it wobbles a lot. And I'm like, how am I going to get this dog off? And I just said off, and darn if he didn't jump, land on that 2x8, walk across, and he actually had to switch to another 2x8 and keep walking. Jumped off, and he's on land. I haven't even tied up the dinghy yet.
He was ready to go.
Oh yeah, he was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And the exact same thing happened in reverse. It came time to take him back. I'm like, well, let's see if I can get him back on that 2x8. And I said, jump. And boom, on the 2x8, ran, jumped in the dinghy, and he's waiting for me. And I'm still sitting on the other side of the mangrove.
Sounds like we all need some agility training, not just the pets.
Didn't have a potty spot for him on the boat. We always took him ashore, and we were always able to find a place to take him. So it worked out just fine.
Yeah, that's definitely reassuring. So as we look to wrap up, I know this is the most impossible question, but just pick 1 or 2 highlights for me.
Go ahead, honey.
The North Channel, my favorite. We rode around up in the Benjamins. We rafted up with dear friends for life that we met on the trip. Shared meals together.
Kathy, never home.
Took our dinghy to shore and did some amazing hikes, and just had a blast. We had bumper dinghy rides and fishing, and just lifetime memories.
Yeah. How about you,
Yeah.
Aubrey? Anything to share?
Oh, absolutely. And I could spend the next hour talking. So 3 quick ones. Quebec City.
Mhm.
You're traveling almost to Europe, it feels like. The marina is right in the heart of the city. It's got cobblestone streets and walled city and cafes outside. It's spectacular.
Mhm.
To the Bahamas. The watercolor, your mind almost can't get around the beauty of it. We found one tiki bar called On the Beach in Hopetown that might be the prettiest place on earth. I mean, it was just you breathtaking. And the third would be the people. I just mentioned Never Home, but Jolly Roger and Harkin and Houdat and all these, so many others that Faith, that we just had the best time with, all over. And your notion of loop frogging, you don't realize how tight those relationships come until like your third jump. Right.
Right.
And then you're hugging each other and you're high-fiving and it's like you found your childhood friend. It's great.
Yeah. Well, so what's next for the two of you? Do you think is there a second loop in your future? I know ShoreBilly Too is still with you. It's not, you're not selling the boat. What do you think? Another loop out there maybe for you?
Well, as early as this morning, a group of us, Powhatan, Never Home, Last Arrow, we're all flirting with that idea. So certainly a potential. We're definitely flirting with the Down East. We will, since it's trailerable, we will definitely tow it to some places. We want to go back to the Bahamas. We will definitely do the ICW south of us because it's easy to get to. I can see getting back up into the freshwater lakes, maybe drive it up somewhere near Chicago and drop it in.
Yeah, flirted with the idea of towing it to Washington State and doing the Inside Passage in Alaska.
Yeah.
Beautiful ideas. We have the discussion all the time about what part of the waterways do we want to boat next? And everything you just said is on our list. We don't currently have a trailerable boat. So, the West Coast part is hard. The rest of it is a little more time consuming to get there if you can't put it on a trailer and drive it there. But we may see you around the Down East Loop next summer. We'll see.
Oh, yeah, you might. So, I view that as probably even more spectacular from a waterways, like that area where the St. Lawrence hits the Atlantic, supposed to be the greatest concentration of sea life in the world. And
yes,
but a little more technical.
Yeah, a lot of people consider it a much more challenging technically boating wise loop than the Great Loop, but certainly spectacular. And we have not decided if we would do the Down East Loop or just kind of do Long Island Sound and maybe part of the New England coast, but we did not get to do the Rideau, and that's high on our list. And we did not do the Lake Champlain route. So, if we go up the Lake Champlain route and take the Rideau, we're covering a lot of new ground that was high on our list the first time. That, as you know, you just can't do it all the first time around.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So
beautiful.
Will the perch squeeze under 17 feet?
We might have to oil up a little bit. Slide under.
There you go.
We can just make 17. There's no way we can ever do the Western Erie with this perch. But we'll see. But yeah, the Champlain route is doable.
We went up there at the same time with Jolly Roger, and I think they actually lowered the water level so he'd fit.
There is one particular bridge that is generally less than the 17 foot. That's kind of the dictating clearance on the waterway. So they will lower the pool a little bit at one of the locks to get you through there. And that we may have that need as well. So,
yeah. But it's so worth it. Here's a thought for you.
Yeah.
Burlington's saying is keep Vermont weird.
Okay.
They are absolutely succeeding.
I like weird. So sounds like my kind of place.
It's a fun town.
Awesome. Aubrey and Terri, this has been fun catching up. Thank you for sharing the details about your boat and your loop. And we'll look forward to seeing you more on the water or at an event or wherever it may be. But thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Kim.
And thank you for all you and your organization do.
Truly our pleasure. But thank you. Thanks to everyone who's watched or listened today. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Great Loop Radio podcast. Until then, safe cruising.